Brianna McCullough. As Mike said, I am an infrastructure engineer. So I currently live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where it is freezing currently. And I work for Target headquarters. So I work on an infrastructure team at Target headquarters. Me and my team manage 10,000 servers. Some of those servers are legacy, and some of those are our new servers that we're bringing in. Fun fact is that I was born and raised Detroit, so I'm from here, and I'm so excited. This is my first talk back home, so I'm super excited to be here. My brothers are in the crowd. My father is here, so they're happy to be here. So I'm super excited. I'm a Spartan. Are there any Spartans in here? Okay, go green, go white. Oh, no. None of that conversation. I am a Spartan at heart. So super excited to be here. How many people know what infrastructure is? Okay, someone tell me. I want to know in layman's terms what infrastructure is. Who wants to be the person to have the box? Okay, here's one right here.
The hardware that your software will run on in the production.
Okay. Someone else want to try? What is infrastructure? That was great. Layman's terms. No one else? Okay. Oh, one person right there.
All right. Get it.
It's the environment where all your software and connectivity comes and meets together.
Yeah, connectivity. So I think in tech, especially right now, what is really popular is front-end development. You see a lot of HTML, CSS, but what you don't really hear about is infrastructure engineers, right? And that's good to a point because the expectation is that infrastructure engineers should be on the back end. Meaning if we are doing our job, you should never see me. You should never see the work that I'm doing unless there's some kind of failure. And so how I explain it to people who have no idea what infrastructure is I say, think about building a house, right? So when you're building a house, before you lay one brick, what do you need at the bottom? Right. So before you can lay one brick, you need to make sure that your infrastructure is solid. Or what's going to happen to that house if you don't make sure that infrastructure is solid? It's going to fail. It's going to fail. And so what I like to remind people is that when you're building something, software, when you're building tools that people are using, you need to make sure that you are building it on solid infrastructure. Because if our servers, Lord forbid, they do not work, none of the applications that run are going to work. And something else interesting is that Target has 3,500 plus engineers. And I know sometimes people are just like, oh, what is Target doing with engineers? You know, like they're a retail space. We're in the retail space. But all this technology you see in the stores, we build in-house. Yeah, we don't outsource any of that. We build all of that in-house. So I think that's an interesting take. But today I'm going to get into a little bit of the one tool that I found the most helpful in my career, and that's Ansible. Ansible is a configuration tool. We use it to configure a lot of our software. So is anybody familiar with what Ansible is? Hands? Okay, a couple people heard it. Buzzword, kind of new, open source technology. Is anybody familiar with Chef? Chef. Okay, so that's what I was using before. So some of the differences between Chef and Ansible that I've noticed is that Chef, the underlying language is Ruby. Any Ruby coders? No. Okay, a couple. And then Python is under Ansible, which is way easier to learn. I know there's Python coders in here. Okay, couple. Cool. Let me get the clicker, y'all. Hold on. Okay. So what I'm here today to talk about is infrastructure as code, right? So, wait. Okay, this is the right first slide. So one of the reasons why it's important that we code up our infrastructure instead of just buying it, outsourcing it, is that it creates networks, virtual machines, load balancers, and connection topology that we are able to manage right from where we are, right? So there was a time where we couldn't manage our infrastructure. We didn't know what was going on. All we knew was to build these applications that were running on this software that we had no idea what was going on in the background. Now we have insight into that. Also, infrastructure as code enables DevOps teams. One of my prime examples is that the partnership between infra and application developers is so much stronger because we're both coding. We're not both buying software anymore. We're both actually building it from scratch. And I think that from that, you learn how to play nice. Not just with individuals and humans, but you know how to play nice in a sandbox where multiple systems are being deployed every single day. And some of the questions that I tend to ask myself before I work on a project, before I build new software, is how do we take the current processes and point them to achieve what a codified view? How can we take something that we're doing manually and think small? Think some of the small things, like cars, test-driven cars, right? We manually drive cars. When I get in my car, I start up the engine, put the key in, put my foot on the gas, put my foot on the brake, shift it into gear, right? How can we take Tesla, right, is doing that now. How are we utilizing automation and codifying that to make manual processes now automation? Another thing is, how can we stop from doing one thing 1,000 times, right? So at this point, I'm talking about scale. Depends on the scale of your business, right? So if you own 5 stores, doing it manually might make sense for your business. But when you have a scale, can someone guess how big Target's scale is? How many stores do we have? 2. We definitely have more than 2 Target stores. No Google, no cheating.
2,500. 40,000.
Less than 2,500. So we have 1,800. 2,000 was really close. So we have 1,800 plus stores throughout the U.S. So when you're thinking about scaling, I don't have time to go in and do anything 1,800 times over and over again. So at that point, scale becomes the topic of conversation. So again, and it enables you to collaborate, right? It enables devs and operations, which don't tend to always get along, to have that mutual understanding and relationship together. Being able to automate, for one thing, it prevents errors, right? So I do migrations all the time of infrastructure, and I've done manual migrations. And I've messed up because I'm a human. I have a human eye. Nothing about me is super special. Like, I'm not a robot. I don't think in absolutes. Like, I am a human, and I am inept to making mistakes. With that being said, leaving something up to me solely to do manually is probably not the best idea, as sure as with every other human, right? Because we're humans, we make mistakes. So being able to automate that process and send it through a lens, not to say that computers don't make mistakes, but it limits our risk a little bit. Another thing about infrastructure is that you can quality control it, right? You know what's changing throughout the process. So think of a quality control system like GitHub, right? So when you're upticking, when you're moving your software up to a new version, you're changing your infrastructure, you now know who's doing what. It's quality control. At any given time, you can control what version you're pushing out. And so I'm gonna do a demo, something really, really simple of just configuring a host, understanding how those hosts get configured. I'm gonna go over a little bit about Ansible Playbooks. Does anybody know what a playbook is? You know what a playbook is? What's a playbook? Yep, and one thing about those instructions is they have to be in order. So when you set up a playbook in Ansible, think about, and I always tell our interns and people who are less senior than me that I'm working with, is that think of, even when you're thinking about algorithms, think of a task, right? You're thinking about a task of like going to the store to buy milk, getting the mail in the morning, right? There's a process. You don't jump out the bed. Well, I don't jump out the bed and just go and pour milk into a glass. Or you don't jump out the bed in negative 10-degree weather and go outside and get the mail, right? With no clothes on, you have on your robe, like nobody's doing that. It's an automated step process. Maybe that's putting on shoes, you're putting on a coat, you're doing whatever you need to do to go outside and get that mail. But it's a process and you have to do it in steps. So I am going to get into connecting my laptop. Are there any questions so far? Okay. So does everyone have the GitHub repository up? Some people, okay. So don't stress if you cannot follow along. This is complex information. I did change it a little bit so that it is not as robust. There is an example that I'm going to use. There's an example that I'm going to use that's kind of like beginner friendly, but even still, if you cannot follow along, watching me step through the process is good enough. If you have questions for me, again, you can find me on social media. I'm at Brew Limitless across all social media, always open to continuing the conversation. So don't feel stressed if you cannot follow along, because it's tough stuff, and I know that everyone doesn't have a MacBook, and it's kind of, the directions are kind of MacBook heavy. So who knows how to use a virtual environment? What do you use your virtual environments to do? Anyone? There's someone right there.
Right here.
Yep.
Just the test to see how some a function might work.
Yep.
If I want to install something I don't want to keep it on my main computer, I'll do it at the end.
Yep. Testing, right? You gotta test. Who here doesn't test their code? I want to know who doesn't test their code. Angie is ready. Listen, who doesn't test their code? Virtual environments enable us to play. We understand how to test locally, but we need to know also in production how our systems are going to play nice with other factors, right? So a virtual environment just allows us to continuously test. When we add new features, we can test on our local machine and get us a little bit more comfortable with the changes that we're making, right? But we have to set up a virtual environment. So you can kind of, you can see way better on the screen. As you can see, some things were airing out this morning, but don't judge. That's why we're testing. So the first thing we're gonna do, so everyone who is following along, do you have your terminal open? Everyone? Who needs a second? Is everyone, the people that are following along, ready? Okay. So the first thing you wanna do is do a Brew update. You can copy and paste the code that's in the repository that was provided to you exactly. My Brew is already updated, but I can update it again if you'd like me to, if you want to see it run on the screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is a Brew update, and let me enlarge this a little bit. This just makes sure that you're running all your up-to-date, like your systems that are needed to run Ansible is all up to date. So you just want to make sure everything is up to date. You run that through your terminal. Mine is probably gonna bomb. I just updated it 1,000 times while I was walking through this demo. So it's probably, so no changes. Did anyone get a big script that's running? Okay. Okay, that's normal. You should see that. So mine is already up to date because I've updated it 1,000 times, so. Is everyone ready to move on? Nobody's behind? Okay. So, and again, this is public information. If this is an exercise you want to practice on your own, more than comfortable with that. So then do a Brew install Python. And this is just gonna install Python because Python is needed to run Ansible. It is the underlying language. So you need to make sure you have one of the latest versions on your laptop to do that. So does everyone have Python updated? And you can just copy and paste the code in the repo if that's easier. Okay. Yep. Yes, so your Python should be above, I had it here, hold on, to run. What is yours at? 3.7.3. Yep, that's perfect. So it should be like 3.7.8 or something like that. Okay, so that's good. And so after you get Python up and running, you're gonna do Python 3 -- version, and that's gonna ensure that you're at the right level of Python to do the exercise. So I'm gonna check mine. So I'm at 3.7.6. Is everyone around that? Okay. So do pip3 install virtual env. This is going to install your virtual environment. So right here where you see pip install virtual env, that's going to get your virtual environment up and running. You need that for testing, which is what we're going to do with the script that's provided in the GitHub repo. So if you can get that up and running and going. And then I don't care what you name your directory. I'm saying name it Ansible 101 just so you know what to come back to, or that you know like to delete it afterwards if you want to clean up, you know, after the exercise. So name it whatever you want to. Do a make directory. Make directory Ansible 101. Do I have any Linux admins in the crowd? No Linux? I know it's y'all don't use Linux at all. I know. It's a Linux people. Too specific. So are there any people that use Linux in the crowd that are not? Okay. I didn't mean to say Linux admin. I'm sorry, that threw some people off. I was like, I know it's people that use Linux in here. Okay. Once you get that directory created, let's go ahead and go into it. So I'm going to cd into mine. So I named mine Ansible. I didn't name it Ansible 101 because I had a directory already set up. Let me enlarge this a little bit. So can y'all see this? A little bit? Let's see. Can y'all see it now? Okay, cool. So I'm in my directory of Ansible. Is everyone here that's following along? I love your shirt. That's a really nice shirt. Black Engineers Matter. I love that. Okay, so after that, we're going to do an ls. Let's see what's actually in our directory. I have multiple things in mind. As you can see, I'm going to do a large scale demo too. So like I said, I can run mine up against a lab for me, and that configures 1,800 plus servers, right? Obviously, I'm not configuring 1,800 plus servers in this run, but you can see how large the scale is going to be. So is everyone to this point, they're in their directory? Okay. So after that, you do virtual env Ansible 101. Are y'all in there? Does anyone need help with following along? Okay. So after that, you can do a source Ansible 101/bin/activate. And that is going to activate your environment. So I'm going to do mine a little bit different. And once you activate that virtual environment, you should see this down here. Sorry, this is still too small. Whatever you named your virtual environment should pop up. Mine is Brianna _ virtual env Ansible. Is everyone? I get the feeling that not a ton of people are following along, but that's fine. We're going to keep it moving, okay? I'm sure you all are just here to learn.
What was the virtual
The command.
What was that one? Was that supposed to create? What was that?
Your virtual env. So virtual env space.
Was I supposed to see something after that happened?
No, it will move on. It'll make your virtual environment available, and then when you activate it, it should pop up. Okay. So after that, so I'm in Ansible right now. I've activated it. And at that point, you want to install Ansible into your virtual VMB. Mine is already installed, but you should get a little run list like this once it is installed and good. If anybody is still with me, you should see something similar, right? I'm sorry? Yep. Okay. And everyone have Ansible installed? So then there are some commands that I'm not gonna run, but this is what's gonna configure your inventory host file, right? So you're gonna do an echo. Now, if you have an IDE, Atom Visual Studio Code, please feel free to use that instead of running it on the actual command line. It will work the same. It's easier than opening an IDE, dropping files and stuff like that. But if you have it available, make sure you go ahead and drop it in an IDE. I have mine in an IDE. So, and when I say IDE, again, Atom, wherever you store your code, whatever you use to edit it. So just drop it in there. And then after that, is everyone to the place? I see people helping each other and getting some things together. And then we're gonna do a Brew install. So this is specific to hacking with the homies. So you do a Brew install. That should bring up some madness. Your server should be running pretty fast. And then after we get to the Ansible ad hoc command, I'm gonna stop right there because I'm gonna have a chance to explain playbooks and how they work. So if anyone needs help, we do have a TA here that can help. So just let him know. But I'm gonna go over how playbooks work. So when you write a playbook, and here's a larger one, kind of at scale. So this is real. This is being used in production. This is something that we use to configure our servers in stores, right? So what we have here is a name. Now, when you run your Ansible playbook, it's gonna be set up just like this. So when you run it, it's gonna say, import full DRAC configuration, right? So it's gonna tell you, this is the play that I'm running. This is the name of the play that I'm running. And in that play, I'm importing an IP, a username, and remind you, you might say like IP addresses, usernames, passwords. Why are we configuring such basic things? Infrastructure is all about configuration, right? So you are using software to configure hardware. It is a very complex way of doing things, but if you automate it, it makes it a lot easier. So you're configuring on a local host, and that local host can be whatever you name it. That's stored in another file. So once you get into passwords, local hosts, things of that nature, that's going to be stored elsewhere. And then you have a share name. You want to import the directory. You want to import your full configuration XML file, and you don't want the job to wait. You want it to just run. So you set that to false, right? So you know how true or false statements work. If it's true, depending on how you have your logic set up, you want it to wait. So where it says job wait is set to false, that means we don't need it to wait. We just want it to run, right? Are there any questions so far? I know this is like, nope, you're following along. Everyone's following along. Thank you. The thumbs up. Okay, cool. So in here, we have a couple of different plays. So you can have multiple playbooks, but in your directories, they have to be in the order that you plan to run them in, right? So again, it's going back to my original example about how we get up every morning, right? I'm not getting up every morning for work and getting in my car and just driving to work, right? Like, I have to drink coffee, I have to get dressed, I have to put on my work clothes, sometimes my work face. I need to get ready. Like, I need to get ready for work. So we're not just getting up and jumping in the car and going, even though I do have some days that I roll out the bed and just jump in the car and go. But there's a sequence of events, and I need that sequence of events in order to run this script. So you can see you have the config, the original build. That's gonna go first. We have our export file. We have the import file. We have a single build. So let's say I just wanna do one single separated build. These lines right here, and you might say, like, there are so many things that don't make sense when you code. Like, it's just like all these special characters for what? This is 100% a special thing, right? Because it says execute this run list. Those 3 lines are saying this is the playbook that I want to execute. It means make it go, right? It's similar to when you comment out code, right? That means you don't want to run it. If these are not here, this will not run. So those 3 lines in Ansible, 10 minutes. Y'all, I gotta wrap it up. I have 10 minutes left. So those 3 lines in Ansible, you use to initiate a run, right? And so then we go through our single import, soft settings. Do people know the difference between soft and hard settings? No. Not you don't know the difference between soft? Really? So soft. So I have a question. So just leading you to your answer, what do I say infrastructure does?
Make everything.
It's a foundation, right? And you're using, what is this that I'm using right now? I'm a software engineer, and I'm using it to configure
Hardware.
So it's soft and hard settings. Yeah, it's soft and hard settings, right? Totally blown away. Like, such a cool way to name something, right? And so then you have your soft settings. You have your configuration, where this gets into more like you're including your tasks. And I'm going to get in a run list, and then I'm going to open it up for questions because I only got 8 minutes, okay? So I'm going to get into my run really quick so I can show you all how to make this work. Okay. So was anybody able to get into their, and so mine is named Bare Metal Conf Ansible because it's, does anybody know what bare metal is? Yep, it's bare. It's bare metal. It's the, you get servers sent to a store, they have nothing on them. Nothing. We configure everything from HQ. So everything you see in the stores, they, vendors, whatever, they drop it off. Everything that we configure, we're doing from our laptops, our local machines. We're running them in labs. It's just bare metal. So that's what we name. And then we have a bare metal Ansible configuration. So I'm going to get into that. And then I'm going to activate my virtual environment. And then you see the Brianna _ virtual environment. You should always see this when you are ready to activate your virtual environment. That means it's working, right? That means your virtual environment is up, ready. You're ready to run your test. So then, don't judge me for going through my. Okay. So I'm going to show you what these commands mean. So you see I have my Ansible Playbook, right? I'm saying I want to run this complete pathway, right? So you see that my file is actually named M640 soft config. So I'm saying, let's run this, right? This is going to fail. You're going to see you're going to see all of it that passes, because just because the whole thing didn't run doesn't mean the whole thing failed. There are certain aspects of it that will fail.
What's failing?
You're about to see. So that is the fail of the config, meaning the hardware hasn't been configured. These are soft settings, right? So it's saying, hey, the play is configuring bare metal with SSL certs and configuration. So that worked. We ran that play. Those plays worked. And you see how I said your play name will directly reflect once you run those tests? So it's saying, hey, that worked. The run iDRAC row, those worked. All your rows worked. Your directory is there, but we did not configure your hardware. That failed. And so to wrap this up before I open it up for questions, and I'm sorry that we didn't get a lot of time to really get into the meat and bones of it, but infrastructure is easier when configured, especially at a larger scale, using configuration tools. That could be Chef is really popular. Ansible is another really popular that everyone is kind of gravitating away from Chef, getting into Ansible. Puppet is something that a lot of people use, but you don't hear about it as much anymore, or I don't. And then just understanding how using code and setting up that code infrastructure makes our systems play nicer and run way better. So again, my name is Brianna McCullough. I am an infrastructure engineer in Minneapolis. Bring Limitless across all social media, always open to continuing conversation. And I'm gonna open it up for questions now.